Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want to talk to you about a couple things that I think play a huge role in every time we go fishing. It depends on how we are fishing, the role that it might play. First of all, I want to talk about wind. In my last day out on the water, the wind was much stronger than I would ever wanted. And because of the way that I fish, I have a terrible hard time fishing in the wind. Keep in mind, I'm using very light gear, a light braided line that the wind can whip around like easier than it can mono or fluorocarbon because it's lighter. Second of all, because of the wind, I can't control what my lure is doing. And I'll be more specific. I'm using a little 1/16 ounce or 1/32 ounce soft plastic bait that I think might look like something a fish would want to eat. So my normal way of casting it might be, let's say, casting across the current and letting the current sort of carry it down, hopefully slowly. But in this case, the wind was so strong that I cast it across, and the wind would take control of my line and just start pulling it down. It couldn't sink because the wind was stronger than the current, and it just kept going and going, and it changed my whole way of fishing. The other thing, when it's windy like that, you've got a loop in your line. Instead of having direct contact, the line is looped, and it's much more difficult to see if it twitches, if you get a strike, or to feel a tap. So it takes all the control that I have in the technique that I'm fishing, and it takes it out of my hands, and I no longer can do the same thing. Now, if you're out in a boat and you're trolling, it's a different thing, because you control the speed of your lure. You control so much. The wind can't control you the same, other than it can create waves and whitecaps and so forth. The other thing that I want to talk about today, because I've thought an awful lot about this lately, is the impact or the effect of smell to the fish. We talk about all their senses, and we're always talking about lures and how they react, how they wiggle in the water or don't wiggle, if they're the right color, if they're the right size. All those things are important. But I'm coming to believe that maybe scent plays a far greater role than we might think. In several cases or several instances, it might play the major role. Now, recently I've been using a bait that's made by Berkley, and they call it Max Scent, MAXSCENT. And what they mean is they put this maximum formula injected into these baits that is unlike any other scent that you can get on any lures. Now, I sound like a marketer, and I'm only telling you what they claim. And that it lasts longer on the bait, and the fish really will hang on to it rather than spit it out. They'll hang on to it because they think they have the real thing. Now, how does this affect everything that I've been doing? I've been using tube jigs, and I've explained what that is all summer long. I've really fallen in love with that lure. It comes in all kinds of different sizes and fatness or thinness and so forth. Every manufacturer has a different idea of what it should look like or resemble. But with this Berkley Max Scent on the tubes that they make, I've had far more strikes, and it's not just that I'm using it more. I will use something else and not get strikes, and I'll say, okay, I'll go back to the old reliable, put that same looking bait on that has the Max Scent, and I start getting strikes. And I started thinking about this as I was trying to prepare my thoughts to talk to you today. I'm thinking about what it's like for us. A lot of times we might not be thinking of eating. I know for a lot of us that's not true. It's 24 hours a day. But I picture the times when you're really not. You're doing other things, your mind's on other things, and all of a sudden you get a whiff of something cooking in the kitchen. And that aroma comes into your nose, and it heightens your whole desire to eat. All of a sudden you're hungry. All of a sudden you want to eat. Well, let's picture those fish are out there in their pool, and they're taking a break, and they're not thinking of eating right now because they can't eat all the time. And this lure comes in upstream of them, starts floating down, and they get the scent that's coming to them, something that reminds them of meals, of eating. And all of a sudden, that lure becomes far more attractive than it wouldn't have been if it was just a floating shape coming down in the water. So maybe scent is critical. Maybe it's the most important thing a lot of times. You think of carp fishermen and the scents that they throw out there and the flavors that they have, their baits that they feel make a difference whether the carp is going to hit them again or hit them at all. And so I think it's important to realize that scent may really play a big factor. And this year, more than any other year that I've ever been fishing, even though I've fished out in the ocean where they're scrumming or whatever they call it, throwing all that into the water, dead fish and oils and so forth, that get the fish turned on and want to eat, more than ever, by using these baits this year, I've come up with a maybe better understanding that scent really does play a huge role. And I got to tell you, I'm a fan now of buying these baits that have this scent. One final thought. It is Strike King that makes, I believe it's Strike King, and they make what they call a coffee tube. They call it a coffee tube because they inject it with coffee flavoring. They claim that fish love coffee. And I won't go beyond there. I'm not going to go on to what that makes me think. But if in fact that's true, and it probably is true, then why don't I take a little plastic bag and put some of my plastic baits in there and put some of the coffee grounds before I make coffee in the morning, put them in there, shake it all up, and let it set for a few days with the coffee. Maybe I'll come up with a lure that is going to be far better than any I've used before. I don't know, but I'm not closing my mind off to trying some of these techniques. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.